A young man, Isaza, sits wounded and beaten, blood dripping from his hand. He reflects on how he never truly believed a war would come, a thought that was always pushed to the back of his mind. The story opens with its first chapter, titled The Wedding. On a rocky battlefield littered with arrows, the young artist Isaza stands with his sword, while a mysterious woman with long black hair and horns, Yachiho, sits calmly on a rock behind him. The setting is revealed to be the Hiwatsu country, an island nation surrounded entirely by the sea. The country is divided into 5 provinces, including the domains of Mizuho, Inami, Takadono, Fumin, and Kinkara. The scene shifts to the northeastern lands, specifically the Mizuho domain. A procession of people travels along a path through vast fields toward a settlement in the distance, under the watchful eye of a hawk circling above. The camera pans to a bustling street in a very old town, filled with vendors, shoppers, and children playing, painting a picture of a lively community. In these lands, a very long time ago, a young Isaza is seen telling a story to a group of captivated children. He holds up a drawing of a mountain as he begins the tale of a folk called the Stone People. Isaza shows a drawing of one of the Stone People. He explains that their bodies were as hard as rock, making them impervious to swords and arrows, and they also possess the amazing ability to control stone. Isaza continues his story, explaining to the children that the country was split into parts and constantly at war with each other. One day, a young man came to the chief of the Stone People, pleading for their strength to end the devastating war that had claimed countless lives. The chief of the Stone People agreed. They stood shoulder to shoulder with the warriors led by the young man, and with their immense power, they ended the long war in no time. The story concludes with the brave young man becoming king of the now united Awatsu, bringing peace and harmony to all, where everyone lived happily ever after. However, the children seemed disappointed, exclaiming, that's the end. Today's story is so short. Tell us some more." Suddenly, one of the boys excitedly jumps up, shouting that he's heard this story from his dad before, and that it has a continuation. Isaza looks on, slightly flustered, as the other children eagerly demand to hear the rest. The boy dramatically reveals the dark twist to the tale. The Stone People, in exchange for their victory, demanded a reward. For each of their people who went to war, they must have one human from Hiwatsu as a sacrifice. He delivers the horrific conclusion. In return for their help in the war, the Stone People took the people and ate them up. As the children scream in terror, Isaza quickly tries to do damage control, admitting he didn't draw that part so as not to frighten them. The children are left unsettled, asking if Stone People still exist and questioning how the king could allow his people to be eaten. Isaza gently pats a worried little girl on the head, reassuring her, "Don't worry, it's just a fairy tale." He places his hand over the drawing of the stone person, covering the unsettling image. Just then, an old man who has been sitting nearby speaks up, looking over at Isaza. "Hey kid," he says, "those drawings, you made them?" The man confirms his suspicion with a simple yes. The children chime in, proudly telling the old man that Isaza also tells them all kinds of stories and teaches them how to write. The old man, impressed, compliments Isaza's work, calling it pretty good. The old man chuckles, noting how much the kids seem to love Isaza. Suddenly, the children's attention is diverted as they spot something approaching. "They're coming," one of them shouts, and they all run towards the excitement. A grand procession makes its way through the town. A nobleman rides on horseback, followed by retainers carrying a large, covered palanquin, indicating a person of high status is passing through. The crowd, including the excited children and the old peddler, watches the procession in awe. The peddler wonders aloud what the occasion is, asking if someone noble is getting married. A young woman in the crowd confirms that it is indeed a wedding. Sakusama, the lord of Mizuho, is getting married. Isaza, meanwhile, has found a spot and is busy sketching the procession as it passes. The young woman turns to the old peddler, addressing him as Mr. Traveler, and asks if he knows of the young lord of Mizuho. The crowd, including Isaza and the children, continues to watch the procession. The peddler replies that he comes from Fumin, but even there, everyone has heard of the Lord of Mizuho. He recounts how the young lord himself led his men to clear the roads and dealt with the Ryozakai bandits, making travel safer. The peddler sings the praises of the young Lord Saku, marveling at how he's made the roads safe and is already a great ruler at only 18. As the man celebrates the news of the Lord's marriage, Isaza, listening in, gives a deep, formal bow and says, "Thank you," leaving the old man puzzled by the gesture. The local woman now looks at Isaza with concern, asking if he's truly allowed to be drawing here so openly. Brushing off the worry, Isaza smiles and explains that he simply wanted to capture the life of the castle town in his art, seemingly unaware of any potential danger or impropriety. As Isaza tries to justify his drawing, saying it's okay, a large, imposing figure appears behind him, grabbing his shoulder and declaring, "It is certainly not okay." The man, a retainer named Gonkin, sternly scolds Isaza for going out without an escort again, questioning what would happen if something were to happen to him. Isaza pleads for just a few more minutes, but Gonkin isn't listening. He lifts Isaza onto a horse, announcing that they are heading back immediately as the crowd waves them goodbye. The old peddler, confused, asks who the man was. The young woman clarifies that the man was his chaperone, Gankin-san, and reveals that the boy he was talking to is the younger brother of their lord, Yukuno Sakasama. The young lord's full name is revealed, Okano Isaza-sama, confirming the identity of the humble storyteller and artist. The scene transitions to an explanation of the country's political turmoil. It began when the great King Hisseiji suddenly died of illness. The crown prince was only 7, so his mother, the Queen Dowager, became his guardian and took political power into her own hands. In her zeal to secure her son's reign, the Queen Dowager became paranoid and superstitious. She appointed her own relatives, the Maheitatsu, who were the rulers of the Takadono domain, to all-important positions, causing discontent among the people and other rulers. A family tree illustrates the political divide. Due to the discontent with the Queen Dowager and her son, the current King Harugi, the number of people supporting the deceased King Hisseiji's younger brother, Tugi, began to grow. The scene shifts to the residence of the lords of Mizuho, Inamiyama Castle. Lord Saku is seated before his council as they once again congratulate him on his upcoming wedding. During the council meeting, Saku states that he is taking the daughter of Lord Watatsumi of Inami as his wife. A councilman notes that the wife of Tugisuma, the late king's younger brother, also comes from the Watatsumi family, highlighting the marriage's political significance. Saku declares to his council that this alliance with Inami is a clear statement that Mizuho will support the king's brother's faction. He urges them to continue defending their lands and people and not to submit to the tyranny of Takadono. One of the councilmen confidently states that with Mizuho and Inami in an alliance, even Takadono won't dare to act out. Regarding security for the next day's ceremony, another reports that a man named Aragi is fully prepared and that the border guard have reported nothing unusual. Saku entrusts the task to Hiragi. With the formal meeting concluded, a councilman enthusiastically raises his fist, declaring that they should celebrate the occasion properly tomorrow. Back on a castle veranda, Gonkin lets out a sigh of relief, stating they got there in time. Isaza apologizes to Gonkin, who seems to imply it's been a while since they had such a frantic chase. Isaza is greeted by his older brother, Saku. Saku gently asks if he went to the castle town again, but then smiles, admitting he used to sneak out a lot himself, so he doesn't have the right to tell him off. Saku's tone turns serious as he requests that Isaza at least take someone with him when he goes out, as it would make him feel safer. Isaza looks down and apologizes sincerely. Changing the subject, Saku says he has something he wants Isaza to draw for him. He asks Isaza to create a drawing of the Go Shintai at the sanctuary. He explains it's a very valuable object said to contain the guardian deity of Mizuho and is only seen by outsiders during special ceremonies. Isaza's face lights up, and he eagerly accepts the task, exclaiming, "Leave it to me." Saku smiles and pats his younger brother's head, just as a woman announces that Saku-sama's guests have arrived. The gates to the castle grounds swing open. Saku and his retainers stand ready to receive the procession carrying the bride. A single slippered foot steps onto the ground. The bride introduces herself with a gentle smile. She is Mio, the daughter of Watatsumi Taikai, Lord of Inami. Saku looks at his betrothed, seemingly captivated. Saku formally greets his bride, introducing himself as the Lord of Mizuho, Yukono Saku. They stand opposite each other, their union representing a powerful new alliance. Saku introduces Mio to his younger brother, Isaza. Mio had been looking forward to meeting him, and Isaza becomes adorably flustered. Saku's retainers chuckle, amused to see the young lord acting his age. Mio greets Isaza warmly, telling him it's nice to meet him. She explains that as the youngest in her family, she's always wanted a little brother or sister. Isaza, blushing, shyly replies, "Likewise." Saku thanks Mio for her long journey, expressing his concern that she must be tired. He kindly suggests she get a good rest before the wedding ceremony on the morrow. He then offers to personally accompany her to her quarters. Mio looks up at her future husband, her expression gentle and open as he prepares to lead the way. Saku gently gestures for Mio to follow him. As they walk away, Isaza and the retainers watch, with one remarking how great the lord and his future wife look together. Later, Isaza sits on the steps, sketching. He recalls the gentle expression on his older brother's face as he looked at Mio, realizing he's never seen Saku look at someone like that before. Holding up his sketch of the wedding procession, Isaza looks at it thoughtfully. He quietly wonders to himself what it must feel like to fall in love with someone. A young woman, Mio, looks on with gentle surprise at a drawing being held up by a young artist named Isaza. Impressed by his skill, she exclaims that he's quite good. Isaza, sitting on the steps, explains that he was just observing, but the drawing seemed to create itself. Flustered by the attention, he quickly becomes shy. Mio kindly asks if she can see more of his work, and he agrees. She is astonished by the sheer volume of drawings he has, asking if they are all depictions of their land, Mizuho. As they walk together, Mio remarks that Isaza must truly love his homeland. He confirms this and adds that he also made a promise. Mio, her curiosity piqued, asks him what promise he's referring to. The scene flashes back 3 years ago. A solemn crowd, including a young Isaza and his older brother Saku, stands before a large, twin-pillared monument on the coast, paying their respects with flowers. During the funeral, onlookers murmur about the tragedy of the boy's parents perishing in an accident, leaving 2 children behind. Little Isaza, unable to hold back his tears, is comforted by his older brother, Saku. Gazing out at the vast, beautiful landscape, Saku remarks that even with their parents gone, the land of Mizuho remains as abundant and beautiful as ever. The young Isaza looks up at his brother, deeply moved by his words. Saku continues, stating that the land belongs to them because their father and mother protected it for them. He turns to his younger brother and declares that from this day forward, the duty of protecting Mizuho falls to the 2 of them. With tears streaming down his face, Isaza resolutely clasps his brother's hand and agrees, solidifying their shared promise to protect their home. Returning to the present, Isaza explains to Mio that he can't protect the land through fighting. He admits that he is not strong like his brother, Saku. Isaza then reveals his own way of fulfilling his promise. He believes that by capturing the beauty of their lands in his drawings, he can preserve them for future generations. Mio smiles warmly, thinking it's a wonderful idea. Seeing Isaza's excitement, she then asks if he could draw her and Saku sometime, as people of Mizuho, which seems to catch Isaza by surprise. A moment of realization dawns on Isaza. Blushing, he happily addresses Mio with a new title, sister-in-law, leaving her pleasantly surprised and flustered. Mio, blushing, asks Isaza to call her that again. In the background, his older brother Saku watches the heartwarming interaction with a gentle, knowing smile. The scene shifts to an expansive, traditional shrine, the location set for the impending wedding ceremony between Saku and Mio. The union ceremony begins inside the shrine hall. An elder officiates, presenting a pair of knotted red cords as a token of their bond, meant to be tied on their little fingers. Saku stands before his bride, Mio, who is veiled by a traditional hood. Isaza and other loyal retainers, including the bearded Gonkin, watch over the proceedings with hopeful smiles, wishing for blissful days ahead. As the ceremonial cord is tied around Mio's finger, Isaza watches with a content smile, wishing that these happy, peaceful days could last forever. The blissful moment is violently shattered. Isaza watches in horror as blood splatters, and he sees a blade protruding from his brother's back. A hooded figure stands behind the wounded Saku as Isaza screams out his brother's name in terror. The ceremony descends into chaos as one of the elders, a man named Hiragi, suddenly draws his sword and attacks the wedding officiant. Gonkin shouts Hiragi's name in disbelief, questioning his actions. The betrayal is complete as armored soldiers burst through the main doors, swarming the hall. With the hall completely surrounded, the invaders declare their purpose. By order of the king, the Lord of Mizuho is to be punished for plotting a rebellion. The wounded Saku confronts the lead traitor, who smugly reveals he has sided with Lord Takadono, who desires Saku's head. He then gives the order to his men to capture Mio alive, as she will be useful against her home domain of Inami. The traitor then gives the final, brutal command: cut down everyone else, leaving no one to get away. Seeing the imminent danger, Saki yells for his loyal retainer, Gonkin, to take Isaza and Mio and escape. With fierce determination in his eyes, Saku ignores his grievous wound and springs into action. He yells for the two of them to get out, cutting down an enemy soldier to begin clearing a path for their escape. Saku becomes a whirlwind of defensive fury, expertly using his sword to single-handedly fend off multiple attackers. He desperately fights to create an opening for his loved ones to flee the slaughter. As Saku fights on despite his wounds, the traitor Hiragi rallies his troops, determined to crush them. Isaza, being led away by Gonkin, can only watch in horror and cry out for his brother. Saku yells at his younger brother, giving him a final command: protect Mio. Isaza looks back in anguish, his hand tightly gripping Gankin's arm as he is pulled away from the fight. Gonkin acknowledges the order and begins to lead Isaza and Mio to safety. Meanwhile, Hiragi coldly instructs his men to capture Mio, their bargaining chip, even if it means crippling her legs. Saku skillfully parries a soldier's strike, his eyes locked in a furious glare with the traitorous Hiragi, who watches the Lord's desperate struggle with contempt. Gonkin leads the escape through the corridors, forcing a door open. The enemy shouts that they're escaping through the back as soldiers begin to close in on them. Amidst the massacre, a group of mysterious, white-robed figures with strange masks surveys the scene. They appear to be searching for something, as one of them examines a sacred stone object and declares it to be a fake, before ordering the others to find the real one. Gonkin quickly assesses that they are being pursued by a small, elite group. He realizes their only chance is to escape the building and call for reinforcements, telling Isaza and Mio to stand back as he prepares to confront their pursuers. Just as they near an exit, their path is violently blocked as an enemy soldier kicks a screen door off its hinges, cutting off their escape route. Without a second thought, Isaza shoves Mio out of harm's way, taking a deep sword slash to his arm in her place. As blood spurts from the wound, he cries out to his sister-in-law. Mio screams in terror at the sight of Isaza's injury. Gonkin, seeing what happened, yells for Mio to take care of Isaza and rushes off to engage the enemy, creating a diversion. Now alone, Isaza and Mio catch their breath while hiding in a corridor. Blood continues to drip from Isaza's arm as they listen for any signs of pursuit. Huddled together in a small, empty room, Mio desperately tears a piece of her own fine wedding kimono to create a makeshift bandage for Isaza's bleeding arm. As Mio tends to his wound, Isaza tries to reassure her, promising that he will protect her. He notes with some relief that the soldiers pursuing them seem to have gone in a different direction. A faint dripping sound catches their attention. Mio looks concerned, while Isaza wonders if the sound is coming from beneath the floorboards. Discovering a loose floorboard, they find a hidden staircase leading down. Seeing a potential escape route, Mio helps the weakened Isaza onto her back and begins to carry him down into the darkness. The secret passage leads them to a stark stone basement. Before them stands a large, egg-shaped rock bound by a sacred rope, but there is no exit. With Isaza on her back, Mio realizes they've hit a dead end. Losing blood and consciousness, Isaza's senses are filled with the overwhelming stench of blood and conflict, which he recognizes as the smell of war. Slumped against the wall, Isaza dazedly wonders if the battle is still raging outside. He feels a sense of detachment, as if observing the chaos from a distance. Looking up at the giant stone, Isaza is overcome with a sense of despair and disgust for the violence, thinking to himself that the people fighting are truly irredeemable. Suddenly, a voice emanates from the giant stone itself, addressing Isaza as lad. It correctly guesses he's in a tight spot, then muses that he seems a bit too young. Isaza stares in absolute terror, realizing the voice is coming from the legendary stone human. The stone being, Yachiho, offers to help Isaza if he fulfills her wish. Isaza recoils, remembering the horrifying tales of the stone people, who grant power only to then devour those they help. Just as enemy soldiers discover their hiding place, Yachiho lets out a sinister chuckle. The enemy soldiers have found them, led by the trail of blood. One of them tells Mio that it's a shame and that she'd better come with them quietly if she doesn't want to get hurt. The soldiers look at Mio with predatory intent. One of them sneers that rather than just taking her, they should have a little fun with her first. Mio freezes in fear. As the soldiers grab Mio and begin tearing at her clothes, the helpless Isaza screams for them to stop. Mio cries out for help, her eyes wide with terror. Remembering the promise he made with his brother to protect Mizuho, Isaza screams out in desperation towards the stone. He offers himself completely to Yachiho, begging her to save everyone. In response to Isaza's plea, the giant stone begins to crack and crumble. The sacred rope snaps, and long, black hair unfurls from within. Isaza stares up in stunned silence as the stone human, Yachiho, awakens from her prison. As shards of stone fall around them, the fully emerged Yachiho, a beautiful and imposing woman with horns, gently holds Isaza's face and gives him a deep kiss, sealing their pact. In the blink of an eye, Yachiho eliminates the threat. The soldiers who were assaulting Mio are gruesomely impaled by sharp stone spikes that burst from within their own bodies. Mio and Isaza are left speechless at the sudden and brutal display of power. Isaza looks at his hands, confused. He realizes that contrary to the legends, he wasn't eaten. He looks up at the naked form of Yachiho, completely baffled by what is happening. Yachiho looks down at the bewildered Isaza with a slightly exasperated expression. She asks if he seriously thought she would devour him like a simple piece of meat, stating she thought he understood the true meaning of her request. Yachiho clarifies the massive misunderstanding. The phrase catch and eat was a euphemism for intercourse. She bluntly informs the stunned Isaza that a promise is a promise. He is going to be your partner, and they are going to have children. Standing over the kneeling Isaza with an air of absolute authority and her hands on her hips, Yachiho makes a bold and final declaration. From now on, I am your wife. Completely overwhelmed by the massacre, his wounds, and this shocking turn of events, Isaza can only kneel and stammer the word wife. Yachiho looks down at her new husband with a confident and knowing smirk. In a chamber thrown into chaos, several soldiers lay defeated. One of the remaining men looks on in utter disbelief. A young, injured boy named Isaza shields a woman, Mio, as a mysterious, naked woman with long black hair named Yachiho stands amidst the scene, the source of the soldiers' shock. Yachiho smirks, noting that the soldiers are also enemies of the lad. With incredible speed, she launches a powerful high kick at a soldier, while the others can only watch, stunned by the naked woman's sudden and overwhelming assault. With fluid grace, Yachiho continues her attack, her long hair flowing behind her as she effortlessly strikes down another soldier, breaking his spear in the process. Enraged, another soldier charges at Yachiho, calling her a bitch as he swings his sword. However, she meets his attack head-on, stopping the blade with ease. The soldier's blade presses against Yachiho's skin, but it doesn't leave a single mark. He and a watching Isaza look on in utter shock, realizing her body is impervious to their weapons. Yachiho retaliates with a devastating punch, sending the soldier flying. As he is thrown back, another soldier on his knees desperately cries for someone to help. Isaza watches in awe, realizing the stories he once dismissed as folklore were true. These are the people of stone, with their solid bodies and ability to control the very earth. Yachiho approaches, telling him she has stopped the bleeding in his arm, and he tells Mio they need to get out of there. As Isaza helps the concerned Mio to her feet, he decides they have no choice but to trust and rely on Yachiho, who watches them with a calm, unreadable expression. Yachiho approaches the pair and points at Mio, asking Isaza if this is the girl he's keeping an eye on, his lover. A flustered Isaza quickly denies it, shouting that she's not his lover, but Mio Dano, his sister-in-law, his big brother's wife. Upon hearing this, Yachiho's eyes sparkle with delight and a wide, toothy grin spreads across her face as she exclaims, "She's my sister-in-law now, too?" Yachiho seems overjoyed, calling it a great start to have a husband and sister-in-law at once. A confused Isaza tries to stop her, questioning what she means by everything and reminding her that he thought her only wish was to conceive child. Yachiho's playful demeanor vanishes. She looms over Isaza with an intense gaze and asks menacingly, "Who said that I wished only for that?" With a sharp glance, Yachiho turns her back on the stunned Isaza and begins walking up the stairs, leaving him to ponder her ominous question. Seeing an opening, the remaining soldiers attack Yachiho from behind, thrusting their spears in her back simultaneously. However, the weapons shatter against her stone-like skin, having no effect whatsoever. She nonchalantly comments that they are what a drag, completely unfazed by the assault. Yachiho turns to Isaza once more, a sly smile on her face. She decides to continue and clearly state her wishes, so that he doesn't misunderstand her and try to undo their agreement later. As she begins to lay out her terms, Yachiho casually grabs a spear that was meant for her. She states her first wish, for her and Isaza to be husband and wife, and to have 5 children together. She continues, stating that her role as his lawful wedded wife is non-negotiable, though she generously permits him to have as many concubines as he likes. The terrified soldiers can only back away, begging her not to come near them. While casually stabbing a soldier in the back with her own blade, Yachiho continues to list her demands for their future life together, adding that their house should be on a hill with a nice view. Isaza watches the carnage unfold, a horrifying thought dawning on him. He realizes that the statue he found underground wasn't being enshrined. It was meant to seal away this very creature, a monster he can't possibly fight. While effortlessly dispatching the rest of the soldiers, Yachiho cheerfully continues outlining their future. She wants a field to grow vegetables together, and she also wants to have 1 cat and 1 dog. Isaza can only stand by, utterly speechless. With a determined look, her face smeared with blood, Yachiho presents her final term. If Isaza will promise her all of this, she will fight for him. Meanwhile, Isaza is consumed by a single, terrifying thought. I may have set free something horrible. The apparent leader of the soldiers stammers, calling Yachiho a monster. He quickly tries to correct his slip of the tongue, saying he meant she is strong like a monster. With a playful smile, she asks him, "Do I look like a monster?" Switching tactics, the commander tries to recruit her, calling her woman and suggesting she join their side. He promises that with her strength, she could become rich and have her own land. As he makes his offer, he loses his footing and tumbles down the stairs. The commander, undeterred by his fall, continues his desperate pitch, asking if wealth and land isn't a good deal. But Yachiho seems to pay him no mind, her gaze instead fixed on the massive stone wall behind him. As the man keeps pleading, promising to speak with his leader, Hiragi-sama, the wall he stands before begins to violently tremble. Without a word from Yachiho, stones begin to break loose and crumble, as if responding to her silent, unspoken command. To the horror of Isaza and Mio, the stone wall collapses entirely, only to magically reassemble in midair, forming a giant, menacing hand of rock. The stone hand pursues the terrified commander as he flees for his life. Yachiho turns her back on the scene, coldly stating, "I do not want any of that." As the commander is crushed and enveloped by the stone construct, Yachiho looks on and declares what she truly desires instead of riches or land. "I want to have a family." Isaza is torn. He admits to himself that he knows nothing about her or the stone people and is rightfully scared. Yet, for some reason, he feels that her desire to have a family is not a lie. Yachiho looks at him, waiting for his answer. Making a momentous decision, Isaza looks at Yachiho with resolve and accepts her terms. He declares, "I will be your husband from now on, and I promise to fulfill all your wishes." A genuine, slight smile graces Yachiho's lips. With the pact sealed, she formally introduces herself for the first time. "My name is Yachiho. Now we are a proper couple." Yachiho asks what their next move is. Isaza introduces himself as Yukino Isaza, but before they can decide, Mio frantically begs them to help. She reveals that the enemy leader, Hiragi, and Isaza's older brother are both fighting at the nearby shrine. Isaza realizes their first priority must be to escape. Mio, however, sees a glimmer of hope, suggesting that with Yachiho's incredible strength, they might be able to go back and help Isaza's brother. Isaza firmly refuses. He argues that returning to the battlefield would put Mio in danger again, and his primary duty is to protect her, just as his brother would want. With a look of pained determination, Isaza recalls a solemn promise he made to his brother, reinforcing his decision to prioritize Mio's safety above all else. Yachiho offers a simple, if brutal, solution. She suggests she could just go in there alone and kill the one named Hiragi. While Mio seems to consider it, Yachiho's straightforward approach to murder appears to make Isaza uneasy. Yachiho instructs Isaza and his sister-in-law to hide. She then raises a pillar of stone from the ground and declares she will be back soon with the enemy's head on a platter. A shocked Isaza can only call out her name as she prepares to leave. From her high vantage point, Yachiho spots the shrine, surrounded by enemy soldiers. She smirks, deciding to head straight there in a single jump, and crouches, gathering her power to leap. But as she prepares to jump, she falters. Looking down at her own leg in shock and confusion, she sees the skin cracking and turning to stone, forcing her to question why it's happening. Losing her balance, Yachiho plummets from the stone pillar, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris as she crashes to the ground. Isaza watches in horror, shouting her name. Yachiho lands hard in the pile of rubble, looking more annoyed than hurt as she pushes herself up from the debris. Isaza and Mio rush to her side. Isaza asks if she's all right or if she's hurt. Yachiho sits up amidst the rocks and claims she just bumped her, but her silence and contemplative look suggest she's realized something is wrong. Suddenly, Yachiho uses her power to erupt a massive stone spire from the ground directly beneath Isaza, sending him flying into the air. As he stands precariously on the newly formed pillar, she tells him to stand still for a moment. Yachiho intently studies her own feet. She watches as the stone texture spreads further up her legs, confirming her suspicion about the nature of her power. High above, the unstable pillar of rock shifts beneath Isaza's feet. He loses his balance and plummets towards the ground, screaming in terror as he falls. In a flash, Yachiho catches the falling Isaza in her arms. She apologizes, explaining she was in a hurry. Isaza, caught by the powerful woman, can only stammer in confusion and shock. Cradling him, Yachiho explains the strange phenomenon. She doesn't know why, but it seems that the greater the distance that separates the two of them, the more her body turns back to stone. As Yachiho sets Isaza down, they are spotted by enemy soldiers on a nearby walkway. Recognizing Mio as the daughter of Lord Nami, they shout, "She's here!" Isaza realizes with a start that they are still very much in danger. With newfound resolve, Isaza tells Yachiho that they have to go. Understanding that she needs to keep him close to maintain her power, Yachiho grits her teeth and concedes, realizing she has no other choice. Putting her powers to use, Yachiho quickly assembles the surrounding rubble into a crude boat. With Isaza and Mio aboard, she propels the stone vessel forward, allowing the three of them to make a swift escape. The stone boat slides down a ramp away from the main building as soldiers below shout for them to be stopped. One gives an order to report their escape to Hiragi-sama. As they flee, Isaza looks back toward the shrine, his eyes wide with horror as he sees it is engulfed in flames. He clenches his fist, distressed and helpless. Speeding away from the chaos and destruction, Isaza can only cry out in anguish for the big brother he was forced to leave behind in the burning shrine. Meanwhile, watching from a distance, a group of mysterious masked figures discuss the events. One asks if they should just stand by. The leader confirms, identifying the boy, Isaza, as the one who seems to have broken the seal, and notes that he is the stone man their elder spoke of. The leader of the masked figures remarks that it would have been better if they had just taken the statue, but the situation has taken an unexpected turn. He hopes Yachiho will cooperate, but states they will use force if needed, though they must not attract attention. The leader gives a final command, send the birds after them. As the masked figures depart, he declares that if necessary, they will take the boy, Isaza, with them too, marking him as a target for yet another unknown faction. Isaza cautiously peeks from the bushes, confirming that their pursuers are gone. The group, consisting of the tall Yachiho, a tired Isaza, and a worried Mio, makes their way down a long, stone-paved path, finally getting a moment of respite. Yachiho leads them to a specific spot, stopping before two large, monolithic stones. As the others look on, she reveals that these are her parents' graves. Just beyond a grove of trees, Yachiho points out their destination, a dark grotto. She explains that this is their escape route, a path arranged for them in case of an emergency. They arrive at a secluded resting place nestled against the cliffside. Isaza remembers that their retainer, Gonkin, had told them about this location. Finally reaching the shelter, Isaza's legs give out and he collapses onto the ground. Mio cries out his name in alarm as he struggles to catch his breath, completely exhausted from the escape. As Mio and Yachiho call out to him, Isaza suddenly stumbles forward, crying out as a sharp pain shoots through his bandaged arm. Meanwhile, the soldiers pursuing them are gathered around a fire, discussing the strange events they witnessed. They talk about seeing a stone pillar extend from afar, and how the group they were chasing slid down a cliff with a stone boat. As the soldiers debate the unbelievable story, a mysterious hooded figure appears. It is the envoy of Takadono, who confirms they have gathered everyone who witnessed the mysterious woman, as ordered. One of the soldiers, looking uneasy, cautiously steps forward to ask the envoy why they have been summoned. The envoy ominously states that gathering them here saves him the trouble of carrying corpses. In a flash, he draws a massive, blood-stained blade and cuts down the soldiers, who look on in terror. Just as the slaughter concludes, a commanding figure in samurai armor appears. It is Lord Hiragi, and he demands an explanation from the envoy for killing their own men. The envoy coldly explains that the men were spreading ridiculous rumors on the battlefield. To prevent a decline in morale before the real battle begins, he executed them. Lord Hiragi isn't satisfied, questioning if the matter is truly so secret. He then reveals what he saw, a woman capable of manipulating stone. The envoy brushes off the question, telling Hiragi that instead of needless probing, he should bring them the heads they are missing. He then orders Hiragi's forces to leave the pursuit of Inami's daughter and the feudal lord's brother to them. The scene shifts as Isaza groans in his sleep. In his dream, he is being gently woken by his smiling older brother, Saku, who asks if he's having a nightmare. Isaza, still in his dream, suddenly hugs his brother tightly, overcome with emotion. Saku comforts his younger brother, listening as Isaza recounts a terrible dream where a rebellion started and Saku was stabbed. Saku reassures him, saying that sounds awful. The dream takes a horrifying turn as Isaza looks at his brother and asks him for reassurance, only to find Saku's body is now headless, his clothes soaked in blood. Isaza's eyes shoot open, his body trembling from the nightmare. Looking down at him is Yachiho, who calmly states that he is finally awake. Still disoriented, Isaza looks at Yachiho, who informs him that he's been exhausted and unconscious for an entire day. He then notices his bandaged arm, remembering the pain from before. As Isaza realizes the events of his nightmare and their current situation weren't a dream, he sees a tray of freshly made rice balls presented before him. Mio appears with a bright smile, explaining that she found a store of rice in their hideout. Isaza and Yachiho look on in surprise. Mio proudly explains that she can now be of help. She points out other useful items she found, including weapons, ointments, and a charcoal stove that Yachiho helped her make. Mio gently tells Yachiho to eat and rest, though she privately wonders if this is Yachiho's first attempt at playing the role of a wife. Isaza is touched by Mio's efforts to raise his spirits despite her own fears. He looks at her with sincere gratitude, and for a brief moment, the group finds a small semblance of peace in their hideout. The quiet moment is broken by the sound of footsteps. Yachiho immediately senses that someone is coming, putting Mio and Isaza on high alert. Yachiho's instinct is to kill the intruders, but as she rises to attack, Isaza shouts for her to wait, recognizing the approaching figure. The visitor is an old, trusted retainer. Isaza cries out his name in relief. Gonken. A happy reunion unfolds as Isaza and Mio express their joy that Gonken is safe. Gonken, equally relieved, greets Lady Mio and then turns his attention to the unfamiliar woman with them. When Gonken asks who Yachiho is, Isaza, flustered and unsure how to explain, blurts out the first thing that comes to mind. She's my wife now. Gonken is utterly stunned by the announcement. After Isaza explains the whole story, the group sits down together, the mood turning serious. Though Gonken finds the story hard to believe, he accepts it as truth. Isaza then asks the questions weighing heavily on his mind. What about my brother? Do you know what happened to the other retainers? Gonken delivers the grim news. He regretfully reports that their retainers at the castle were executed, and their heads were put on display in the town. However, Gonken offers a small sliver of hope amidst the tragedy. Lord Saku's head was not among them. Isaza and Mio are stunned by the news. Gonken believes Saku may have been able to flee. Isaza clenches his fist in grief, realizing their people must have protected his brother to the very end. Gonken presses Isaza for a decision on their next steps. Now thrust into a leadership role, Isaza lays out a map showing their two options: go east and rally their remaining retainers, or go west and seek help from Inami. Gonken warns that he saw Takadono soldiers swarming the area. He fears their remaining retainers may be intimidated into submission without Lord Saku or the other senior leaders present. However, Gonken also believes that if Lord Isaza, his lordship's brother, were to appear, their men would likely unite to defeat the traitors led by Hiragi. Gonken then discusses the other option, seeking reinforcements from Inami. He points out that the only ones who can quickly secure that aid are Lord Isaza and Lady Mio, as a request from a mere retainer would be questioned. Gonkin brings up a major obstacle for that plan. If we were to go to Anami, how would we cross the river? All the bridges and shallow crossings are likely guarded. While Gonkin sees a dead end, Yachiho casually states she can create a bridge anywhere, much to his bewilderment. Isaza is left to weigh the two heavy options with little time to spare. Isaza makes his decision. They will head to Anami. He declares it is his duty to safely escort Mio, bring back reinforcements, and return to Mizuho. Gonkin agrees that this is a wise course of action. With the plan decided, Yachiho announces that they will depart tomorrow. For tonight, she will seal the grotto's entrance with stone so they can rest. True to her word, Yachiho uses her power to block the entrance with massive boulders, ensuring they can all get a good night's sleep without needing to stand watch. Later that night, Isaza sits alone, staring out from the grotto, unable to sleep. Yachiho finds him and asks what's keeping him awake. Isaza confesses that he's afraid to sleep, worried that he'll turn to stone again without even realizing it, referencing the uncontrolled power he displayed earlier. Changing the subject, Isaza asks Yachiho why she was sealed in the grotto in the first place. She simply turns away and says, "I don't know." Yachiho reveals that while Isaza was unconscious, she spoke with Mio about the legends of the Gritborns. She confirms to Isaza that all those childhood stories were, in fact, true. However, she clarifies that some parts of the tales were abridged. She explains a critical detail. By nature, Gritborns cannot procreate with their own kind. Yachiho continues, explaining the grim consequence of their biology. To perpetuate their lineage, it became necessary for them to bond with those outside their kin and, in the process, offer a sacrifice to create a mate. Yachiho continues her story, revealing she made a pact to lend her aid to the first king of Hiwatsu and took part in a great battle. But as she grew older, having no relatives, she always yearned for something she could call family. She recalls that after the battle, a celebratory banquet was to be held. The day before, she met someone, but the next thing she knew, she found herself sealed in the underground grotto. Isaza asks who she met, but that part is unclear to her. The only thing she remembers distinctly are the words that were said. The spell sealing her would be dissolved when a heartfelt wish was granted. Yachiho surmises that because power is seen as nothing but a seed of calamity in a world of peace, she was likely sealed away for that reason. Isaza quietly processes this incredible story. Yachiho then turns the question on Isaza. She, who only wanted a family, has now involved him in this conflict. She asks if he thinks she made the right choice. Isaza looks away, conflicted, thinking he should be out saving his brother. Isaza confesses his deepest fear. He admits that just the thought of someone getting hurt because of his choices scares him so much. Yachiho bluntly calls him a dumbass. She points out that she chose him, and he chose her. She reminds him that even his sister-in-law and the old man, Gonkin, chose to follow him. The decision was not his alone. Gently touching his forehead, she reassures him. She tells him that whatever happens from here on out won't just be his responsibility to bear, but theirs together. Lying down beside an exhausted Isaza, Yachiho playfully suggests that they would make a good married couple. Isaza, caught off guard, listens as she asks if he understood. Leaning in closer with a seductive look, Yachiho whispers to a blushing Isaza, "In that case, shall we do it?" A flustered Isaza immediately protests, stuttering that they can't do it now, especially with other people nearby. Yachiho calmly reassures him that it's okay. As she removes her top, she explains that their companions are in a deep sleep from exhaustion. Now on top of him, Yachiho watches a beet-red Isaza who can only call out her name in a flustered daze. Suddenly, their moment is interrupted. Isaza looks up in alarm as he spots a strange creature, a bird made of stone. The sound of footsteps approaches, showing two pairs of unfamiliar footwear. Someone is coming. Yachiho's expression shifts. She senses the intruders and remarks that they have some inconsiderate company nearby. Elsewhere, the young lady Mio asks their elderly companion, Gonkin, if there are other Gritborns besides Yachiho, questioning if their pursuers could be more of her kind. Back in the grotto, Isaza and Yachiho wonder if the stone bird is trying to beckon them. Sensing danger, Yachiho instructs Isaza to be ready for a quick escape with Mio and Gonkin while she handles the situation. Yachiho tells Isaza he is coming with her, and he agrees without hesitation. She then sends a stone bird flying from her finger straight towards the intruders. Isaza and Yachiho step outside to confront two mysterious figures wearing cloaks and strange masks, clearly not human. Yachiho demands to know who they are. The larger figure, a muscular man with dark horns, introduces himself as Aotisu and the smaller, short-haired girl beside him as Azumi. Yachiho thinks they're a suspicious bunch, and Azumi retorts that she shouldn't be talking given her state of undress. Aotisu recognizes Yachiho, addressing her by a fearsome title. Yachiho the Inferno, a warrior feared for destroying every single enemy on the battlefield, burning like a raging flame. Aotisu continues, revealing that he also fought in the previous war, though on a different battlefield. He had heard that Yachiho disappeared, and it's been 300 years since he last heard her name. Both Isaza and Yachiho are shocked to learn that 300 years have passed. Yachiho quickly explains to a bewildered Isaza that the long-lived Gritborn can live for a millennium, confirming it wasn't just a fairy tale. Isaza, processing the revelation, asks if they came just to reminisce about the past. Aotisu clarifies that they are here under their boss's orders to pick Yachiho up. Yachiho flatly refuses, telling them to go away. However, Azumi declares that Yachiho is coming with them, and that includes the boy, Isaza. With a cruel smile, Azumi crushes the stone bird in her hand. She tells Yachiho to shut up and obey, stating that it's an order, not a request. Aotisu tries to de-escalate, saying he doesn't want to fight without reason. But Azumi has other ideas, suggesting it would be easier to turn Yachiho to stone and take her back after separating her from Isaza. Isaza confronts Azumi, asking how she knew about his past presence at Inamiyama. She gives him a sly, taunting smile and simply replies, "Who knows?" Aotisu attempts to negotiate, stating that the Gritborn's grand desire requires the power of the Inferno. He promises to guarantee Isaza's safety and let Mio and Gonkin go if Yachiho complies. She immediately refuses. Yachiho points out that she doesn't like how they're acting as if they are in control. Furthermore, she adds, there's no guarantee that they won't harm Isaza once she's with them. Aotisu calls her a bold woman. With a defiant, toothy grin, Yachiho throws down a challenge. If you want me to obey, win. Deal. The battle lines are drawn, and the two sides prepare to clash. Accepting the challenge, Aotisu gives his eager subordinate a final order as she takes her stance. Don't kill her, Azumi. Don't break her horns, either. The fight for Yachiho's freedom begins. Isaza looks on in horror as Azumi moves to stand between two large stone monuments, with Aotisu looming nearby. With a great rumble, two stone lion dog statues, the guardians of his parents' graves, are ripped from the earth. Aotisu states their plan: either separate Isaza from Yachiho or knock Yachiho out. The fight begins. Azumi sends one of the stone lions lunging toward Yachiho, threatening to kill her if she resists. Yachiho, now carrying Isaza, dodges the attack just as Aotisu brings his massive hammer down on them. Aotisu's hammer shatters the ground, but Yachiho leaps away with Isaza, narrowly escaping the devastating blow. As the other stone lion closes in, Yachiho remains calm. Using her power, she raises a thick wall of stone from the ground to shield them from the attack. The beast crashes into the stone barrier, which holds firm. From the safety of a nearby cave entrance, Isaza watches in awe and concern, shouting Yachiho's name. With a confident smile, Yachiho tells Isaza not to worry and to wait for her. She floats several large chunks of rock in the air, preparing her counterattack. Yachiho launches her assault, but Azumi is too quick, dodging the projectiles with ease. She mockingly notes that the stone barrier is too tough to be broken by normal means. Isaza watches the intense battle unfold, realizing this is a fight between Gritborns. He is stunned that Yachiho is fighting evenly against two powerful opponents at once. From across the battlefield, Aotisu warns Yachiho that their fight is causing a huge commotion on the unstable cliff, cautioning her not to blame him if it collapses. Yachiho retorts that she can handle it. Aotisu observes with a smirk that her power is unusual. Most Gritborns can only control stones they directly touch, but she is different. Aotisu is in awe of Yachiho's power. He notes the incredible size, distance, and amount of stone she can move at once, all while effortlessly maintaining the barrier's form. Yachiho hurls a massive stone, completely shattering one of the beasts. Aotisu finally understands her reputation. So this is Yachiho, the Inferno. He thinks every aspect of her ability is on a whole different level. Realizing Yachiho is far stronger than he anticipated, Aotisu decides this might be bad. He calls out to Azumi, telling her to get serious, and she reluctantly agrees. Azumi redirects her remaining stone lion, remarking that things would have been easier if she'd done this from start. She turns her attention towards the forest, taunting, "Did you think I didn't notice?" Her target is revealed, Gonkin and Mio, who are hiding among the trees. Azumi gloats, having known they were there all along. Seeing her friends in danger, Yachiho's expression hardens. She immediately moves to intercept the attack. Just as the stone lion is about to strike, Yachiho throws up another powerful barrier, protecting Gonkin and Mio from the attack. But this creates an opening. As Yachiho is distracted, Aotisu charges in, telling her to worry about herself as he swings his hammer. The blow connects, sending Yachiho flying off the edge of the cliff. Isaza screams her name in terror. As she falls, Yachiho realizes she got too far away from Isaza, and her foot begins to turn to stone. Helplessly, Yachiho plummets down the cliffside, reaching out as Aotisu watches from above. At the last second, she slams her hand into the cliff, creating a stone pillar to stop her fall. Aotisu mutters that while he wished she'd fallen, he knew it wouldn't be that simple. Aotisu observes that Yachiho's power seems to destabilize when her own petrification starts. At the same time, as Isaza watches in horror, his own arm begins to crack and turn to stone. With Yachiho clinging to the cliffside below, Azumi seizes the opportunity. She directs her stone lion to lunge forward, pinning a struggling Isaza to the ground and successfully separating him from his protector. Seeing his lord pinned, Gonkin charges forward, shouting Isaza's name. But Azumi moves in a flash to intercept the old warrior, cutting him down with a single cruel slash of her blade. Mio rushes to Gonkin's side as he collapses from his wound. Pinned under the stone beast and watching his friends get hurt, Isaza feels a surge of helplessness, wishing desperately that he had the power to fight back. Watching from the cliff face, Yachiho listens as Aotisu remarks that her instinct to protect her friends revealed an opening. He asks why she would go to such lengths for them, just as Isaza's desperate cry echoes from below. "I want power." Yachiho answers softly, explaining that even though they just met, she has longed for this for ages. They're the first family she's ever had. As he hears this, Isaza remembers her words, that he had made a promise to grant her wishes. Aotisu seems to understand, murmuring family, "Sorry about that." But his resolve doesn't waver as Isaza continues to struggle fruitlessly under the weight of the stone beast. Fueled by pure rage and desperation, Isaza screams, "Out of my way, ye!" With his arm, now fully transformed into solid stone, he slams his fist into the side of the massive creature. His petrified arm begins to crumble and reform, glowing with immense energy. He screams again, channeling all of his despair into a single desire. "I need the power to fight." Recalling his vow, Isaza unleashes his newfound strength in one explosive blow. "I promise to protect everyone," he roars, as his punch completely shatters the giant stone lion. The stone beast explodes into 1,000 pieces. Everyone, Azumi, Aotisu, Gonkin, Mio, and Yachiho, stares in utter disbelief, shocked by the sudden turn of events and wondering what just happened with his arm. The dust settles, and Isaza stares in stunned silence at his own arm, now a complex and powerful-looking stone appendage. His grit-born power has finally and violently awakened. Isaza looks at his own arm, which is suddenly transformed into a massive stone appendage. He's shocked, wondering if this is somehow Yachiyo's power at work, as he discovers he can move the stone arm freely. The immense stone arm crashes into the ground with incredible force, shaking the very earth beneath them. Isaza, kneeling, can only stare in disbelief at the raw, untamed power he has just unleashed. Seeing Yachiyo in danger, Isaza desperately runs towards her, shouting her name and vowing to save her. However, his charge is brutally cut short as Gauten, the enemy Gritborn, intercepts him with a powerful kick, sending him flying. Gauten stands over the fallen Isaza, his expression grim and determined. Isaza is completely overpowered, pinned to the ground under the soldier's might, his petrified arm lying uselessly beside him. Just as Gauten presses his advantage, the stone on Isaza's arm begins to writhe and expand uncontrollably. Gauten leaps back, his face a mask of pure shock as he witnesses the impossible transformation. The sudden surge of power sends tremors through the area, catching everyone's attention. Yachiyo looks on with alarm, while the other two pursuers, the aggressive young girl, Azumi, and an old man, watch in stunned silence as the ground trembles. Isaza watches as Yachiyo's own power seems to fly through the air, gathering loose stones. He realizes with a start that his stone arm is doing the same thing, collecting rocks on its own accord. Yachiyo realizes that the petrification that sealed her is now undone. More importantly, she understands that the rampaging stone power doesn't belong to her. It's coming from Isaza's arm. The surrounding stones coalesce into massive, snake-like tentacles that erupt from the ground, wrapping around Isaza and the enemy soldier Gauten, trapping them both in a chaotic storm of rock. Caught in his own uncontrolled power, a terrified Isaza screams for Yachiyo to make it stop. Yachiyo herself can only look on in confusion, bewildered by the phenomenon unfolding before her. Yachiyo understands what's happening. Her own power is flowing through Isaza, but it's his own intense desire to fight and protect that is giving it form and will. He is the one in control, even if he doesn't know it. Gauten, shocked, exclaims that it's unheard of for a regular human to wield their grit-born power. With a powerful swing of his staff, he shatters one of the stone tentacles that binds him. Amidst the chaos, the old man grabs the young girl, who cries out in surprise. He states his need to find out if the boy, Isaza, is the one who undid Yachiyo's seal. Yachiyo, seeing the danger, yells for them all to get away. As the stone tentacles lash out wildly, Yachiyo realizes the power doesn't distinguish between friend or foe. She knows she won't be able to use her own abilities if she gets caught again and must get closer to Isaza to regain control. Seeing the pandemonium, the young Gritborn, Azumi, smirks. Unsure of what's going on, but seeing an opportunity, she declares that if they want it to stop, she'll gladly be the one to do it, stepping towards her own stone beast. With a wicked grin, Azumi stands beside a massive bird-like stone creature. She asks menacingly how they'd feel if she just ripped that troublesome arm right off of Isaza's shoulder. Isaza looks on in absolute horror as Azumi and her stone bird monster advance, adding yet another terrifying threat to the already uncontrollable battlefield. The stone bird creature attacks, crossing its massive wings to block and deflect the rampaging stone tentacles that were erupting from Isaza's power. Azumi looks on in disbelief as a huge wall of rock suddenly erupts from the ground, blocking the path. Her comrade, Gauten, is equally surprised by this sudden intervention. It was Gauten who created the barrier, striking the ground with his weapon to raise a defensive wall and intervene in the chaotic battle. Gauten is stunned as he realizes the very stones under his control are being pulled away, sucked into the vortex of Isaza's overwhelming and untamed power. With Gauten's control slipping, one of the stone tentacles breaks free and whips directly towards a shocked and defenseless Azumi. The massive stone tendril strikes Azumi with brutal force, knocking her off her feet. Gauten rushes to his fallen comrade, crying her name, Azumi. He frantically checks the horn on her head, sighing with immense relief to find it intact. "You're okay. It didn't break," he murmurs, highlighting just how critical these horns are to their survival. Supporting the injured Azumi, Gauten looks back at the still raging storm of stone tentacles. "I don't get what's happening," he admits, "but our powers are as good as sealed." Realizing they are completely outmatched, he concludes that they can no longer engage. Gauten announces their retreat, but Azumi protests, arguing it's the same as losing. Gauten calmly retorts that they have already lost, and that his initial judgment of the situation was a mistake. As he carries her away from the battlefield, Gauten scolds Azumi, reminding her that his miscalculation of their opponent's power almost led to her horn being broken. He firmly states that retreating is the only correct decision. Seething with rage, Azumi looks back at the swirling vortex of stone, unable to believe that Isaza, who she sees as just a puny human, was the one who managed to crack her horn. Meanwhile, Isaza is lost in a blind rage, his desire for vengeance fueling the chaotic storm around him as he screams out his intent to slay his enemies. The stone tentacles continue their destructive rampage, tearing up the landscape. Isaza, now horrified by his own creation, screams repeatedly for the chaos to stop, but the power is beyond his command. Mio watches in terror, shouting a warning as the cliff face begins to crack and crumble under the immense strain of Isaza's uncontrolled power. Now aware of the destruction he's causing, Isaza desperately begs for it to stop, realizing the entire cliff is about to collapse. From a ledge below, Yachio tries to get through to him, telling him to calm down. Ignoring the danger, Yachio leaps towards the vortex, intent on reaching Isaza. A panicked Isaza screams for her to stay back, warning that it's too dangerous. Yachio pays his warning no mind, simply telling him not to be stupid as she presses forward into the storm. As she steps into the radius of Isaza's power, the immense energy causes her own abilities to go haywire, and her foot begins to turn to stone. Fighting through the painful petrification spreading up her leg, Yachio pushes on, striking away debris as she focuses on her goal. Finally reaching him, Yachio takes Isaza's hand amidst the raging storm. She looks at him and tells him that the two of them are bound to each other. With a reassuring smile, Yachio tells a stunned and blushing Isaza that no matter what happens, they can pull through any obstacle as long as they are together. She then points out a crucial detail he missed in his panic. The very same stone tentacles that were on a rampage had also instinctively shielded him from the enemy's earlier attack. Yachio begins to mentor Isaza, explaining that while the stones have no will, they respond to intense emotions in dangerous situations. This means he has the power to control them. She urges him to focus. Her first attempt at teaching is a bit too simplistic, as she tells a confused Isaza to just grip it and wham, once he's focused. Seeing his confusion, Yachio tries a different approach. She asks him to simplify his thinking and to keep a clear image in his mind, to meditate on the vision of a calm and steady arm. Her words finally click. Isaza understands that he doesn't need to fight the power, but instead needs to envision what he wants it to become. With Yachio's hands guiding him, Isaza feels a surge of confidence. He closes his eyes and focuses his mind, determined to bring his vision to life. As an artist, Isaza taps into his natural talent. In his mind, he deconstructs the image of an arm into its basic forms and structures, visualizing it perfectly before opening his eyes with newfound clarity. Following his mental command, the chaotic mass of stone tentacles retracts and reforms, shaping itself into a massive, perfectly articulated stone arm, proving that Isaza has finally gained conscious control over his power. Isaza looks at his creation, sighing with relief as the rampage finally ceases. A safe distance away, Mio expresses her own relief that the chaos has stopped. With the danger past, Yachio sees that Mio and the old man are safe. Exhausted, she sits and playfully scolds Isaza, calling him a handful. Isaza apologizes, and Yachio admits this is the first time she's ever been so thoroughly beaten in a fight. However, she follows this with a warm, genuine smile, adding that this is also the first time that someone has ever protected her. Despite looking drained from the battle, Yachio leans in close to Isaza with a mischievous glint in her eye. She teases him, saying she suddenly has the urge to do it right this instant. A completely flustered Isaza immediately panics, stammering that they can't. A flustered Isaza processes her words, realizing she was only offering to help him with his training. Just then, the exhaustion from the continuous battles finally catches up to Yachio, and she falls asleep on Isaza's lap. Gonkin approaches, asking if she's asleep, and Isaza confirms. Isaza is struck with a pang of guilt, reflecting on how Yachio has been fighting nonstop since their escape. He realizes he has made her strain herself far too much, all while she put on a brave face. Mio observes them, suggesting that perhaps Yachio finally feels relieved, knowing that she now has someone who will protect her no matter what. Her words resonate with Isaza, giving him a new sense of purpose. Isaza blushes, thinking that it's great if she feels that way. However, Yachio's calm sleep hides her own deep-seated fear of being turned into stone again without even realizing it. Isaza gently strokes Yachio's hair as she sleeps peacefully. He looks down at her with a new, quiet determination in his eyes, accepting the responsibility of being her protector. As dawn breaks over the horizon, Isaza remains vigilant, watching over Yachio and ensuring she can rest safely. Gonkin approaches the young lord, suggesting that it would be wise to resume his sword training while they travel. Isaza, eager to grow stronger, readily agrees. As Mio points out the rising sun, Gonkin addresses Isaza with his formal title, Lord Isaza, advising that they must move on as it's too dangerous to remain in one place. Isaza stands alone for a moment, looking out at the vast, desolate landscape, while Gonkin and Mio stand back, giving their lord a moment to himself. Looking at the remnants of his power, Isaza speaks to his deceased parents. He promises them that as soon as peace is restored to Mizuho, he will return to them, though tending to their graves must wait. With his gaze fixed on the path ahead, Isaza makes a solemn vow to his parents that he will return their graves to them, his expression filled with newfound resolve. The scene shifts, showing a group of soldiers loyal to Lord Hiragi as they survey a distant fortress, indicating the broader conflict that still rages on. In a hidden room, an elder is informed that Lord Hiragi is using Takedono's soldiers to pressure the remaining loyal retainers of Mizuho into surrendering. The elder then turns to a young attendant, asking for a report on their own situation. In a village within the Mizuho territory, an old man laments the fate of a man who was so close to death, remarking that it's a miracle he's still alive. A young boy, carrying a basket, adds that his sister advises against jumping to conclusions. The man they speak of, Saza, lies in bed, covered in bandages and bruises. As a cloth is placed on his forehead, it's noted that a strong will to live must be what's keeping him going. The boy's sister, Sawa, stands with a somber expression, her brow furrowed with worry over the recent events that have befallen their village and injured their companion. Meanwhile, the villagers are being terrorized by a soldier. The people plead, swearing that the Lord isn't there, but the soldier threatens them with dire consequences if they are found to be hiding him. Fear spreads throughout the village. While some try to silence dissent, others whisper about the dire news. Their previous lord's chief retainer, Hiragi, is now the new lord, and an all-out war with the Inami is imminent. The people are left to wonder what will become of their once peaceful Mizuho. The news of Lord Isaza's escape and his alleged treason has shaken everyone to the core, including the terrified vassals now scattered across Mizuho's territory. A woman worries for Isaza's safety. Through the pressure of the military power granted by Takadono, Lord Hiragi quickly brought the entire west side of the Mizuho territory under his control, solidifying his grasp on the land. Deep in a forest, two of Hiragi's soldiers are on patrol. One of them thinks he heard something, but the other dismisses it, believing only women and children escaped. Their commander, however, insists they continue the search. He states that Lord Hiragi's orders are to find the escapees before Takadono does, remarking that they would have been food for beasts by now. Once the soldiers have gone, the hiding party emerges from behind a wall of magically levitated stones. Yachiho, a woman of the stone people, dispels her power. Isaza, the young lord, looks on in amazement at her abilities. The group continues their journey. Gonkin, Isaza's retainer, notes that they were able to cross the river safely thanks to Lady Yachiho. However, Yachiho warns that the further they go, the more pursuers they are likely to encounter. Gonkin points out their current location on a map. They are just beyond a farming village, approaching the boundary between the Mizuho and Inami territories. This is precisely why their enemies are focusing the search efforts here. Gonkin suggests leaving the road for the mountains, but Isaza's other retainer advises against it due to fatigue, wild animals, and the risk of getting lost. He insists they must proceed with caution. Isaza agrees. As they walk, Yachiho asks Isaza if he's getting used to the stone arm she created for him. He smiles, clenching his new hand, and replies that while it's not as good as his original, he can at least grab things now. Isaza wonders how he's able to use the power of the stone people, noting that he hasn't lost control since that one time. Yachiho playfully suggests that maybe they were just made for each other, bringing a smile to Isaza's face. Eagerly, Isaza asks if she thinks he can learn to control this power as well as she can. Yachiho admits she doesn't know, as she's never heard of anyone outside of her own people who could use Ishikuri. Isaza asks what Ishikuri is. Yachiho explains it is the power to manipulate stone and decides that this is a good opportunity to teach him a little about it. She explains that most of her people can only move stones they directly touch. She, however, is an outlier, able to manipulate them from a distance. The accuracy, weight, and amount that can be moved at once depends on the individual. Yachiho continues, stating that while everyone born into the stone people inherits this ability, there is one way in which they can lose the power of Ishikuri. She points to her horn, revealing that this is their Achilles heel. If they lose their horns, their power is lost. This is their greatest weakness. Yachiho instructs Isaza that if they come across their pursuers again, he should aim for their horns. Isaza confirms he understands. Just then, a woman's scream cuts through the forest. The scene cuts to one of Hiragi's soldiers violently grabbing a village woman by her hair as she screams in pain and terror. A man from the village cries out for the soldier to stop, but he is brutally kicked to the ground for his defiance. A larger, bearded soldier addresses the villagers, callously blaming a woman's suffering on her husband who tried to defy them. With the opposition crushed, he announces that all the men have now agreed to be conscripted, and his soldiers begin marching them away. From their hiding place, Isaza's group watches the cruelty unfold. As the conscripted men are loaded onto carts like cargo, Isaza recognizes the aggressors, his voice tight with anger, Hiragi's private soldiers. Isaza watches in horror as Hiragi's soldiers use women and children as human shields to ensure the drafted men obey. His resolve hardening, he turns to Yachiho and asks, "Shall we?" However, Gonkin, his elder retainer, advises caution. He tells Lord Isaza to wait, pointing out that there appear to be only 3 enemies, and that with Yachiho's power, taking them down would be simple. Gonkin elaborates that even if they defeat these soldiers, more will be sent, which won't solve the underlying problem. Mio then chimes in, suggesting they could take the villagers with them to the safety of Inami territory. But Gonkin dismisses this idea as well. He warns that leading a large group of people would make their party easy to spot for other soldiers. If discovered, the enemy might resort to taking hostages, putting everyone in even greater danger. Gonkin presses his lord, asking if he would be able to show no mercy in such a situation. Shocked, Isaza questions if his retainer is truly suggesting they should just turn a blind eye to the villagers' suffering. With a heavy but firm tone, Gonkin confirms yes. His priority is to protect his lord and their mission above all else, even if it means making a difficult sacrifice. Kneeling before him, Gonkin advises Isaza as a loyal subject. He reminds him that the men are being drafted as soldiers, not being led to immediate execution. He urges his lord to consider all possible outcomes and choose the best path forward. Isaza clenches his stone fist, acknowledging that he understands Gonkin's logic. The safest path would be to slip away unnoticed. But as he watches the fearful families being torn apart, he is visibly conflicted. Isaza argues back, pointing out that if they truly consider all outcomes, there is no guarantee that these conscripted men won't be slaughtered immediately in the war. For the families left behind, their future is terrifyingly uncertain. With a sudden burst of determination, Isaza makes his decision. I will save them now, while I can. That is my best choice. Mio looks on, remarking that he has a heart that puts people first, very much like his late brother, Lord Saku. Now committed to his course of action, Isaza turns to his experienced retainer and asks, "So, how are we going to do this, Gonkin?" He knows they need a plan to get the villagers away from Hiragi's soldiers. Isaza looks out into the landscape, and his eyes land on a distant waterfall, sparking an idea for his rescue plan. Gonkin confirms that there is indeed a fast-flowing river right next to the village. With this information, Isaza turns to Yachiho, his plan beginning to form. Looking to Yachiho, Isaza says he needs her help. Down below, the bearded soldier from Hiragi's army impatiently yells at the new conscripts to get moving. The soldier marches the terrified men along, threatening them that if even one of them tries to escape, all of them will suffer the consequences. The plan is set in motion. As Isaza and Mio walk near the village, a soldier spots them. "Over there," he shouts, recognizing Isaza as the missing Akano boy. The soldiers see Isaza and Mio in their noble-looking clothing. Though unable to see Isaza's face clearly, they mistakenly assume Mio must be the daughter of the Lord of Anami, making them high-value targets. An archer grins, imagining the immense reward they'll receive from Hiragi for bringing them in. As he draws his bow, Isaza and Mio break into a run, acting as the perfect bait. Panting, Isaza and Mio flee through the woods, leading the pursuing soldiers away from the village and towards the cliffs. They arrive at the edge of the cliff overlooking the waterfall, seemingly cornered. The bearded soldier offers Isaza his life in exchange for the girl, revealing his orders were to bring the boy back dead or alive. Without a moment's hesitation, Isaza and Mio take a leap of faith, jumping from the high cliff into the churning water below the waterfall. The soldiers watch in utter disbelief. What? They jumped by themselves? The leader shouts in frustration as their disguises are swept away by the current. The soldiers curse as they see their potential reward floating away. While they consider searching downstream, their leader's attention is caught by a massive stone bridge that has just appeared, with Yachiho standing at its entrance. The ruse is revealed. This takes priority. In a small cave tucked behind the waterfall, Isaza and Yachiho catch their breath. Isaza, exhausted from the effort, leans against Yachiho, who smiles and says with satisfaction, "I have to say, I think it worked." Meanwhile, the plan unfolds perfectly. While the soldiers were distracted by the decoy, Gonkin and the rest of the party lead the grateful villagers across the newly formed stone bridge, which provides a hidden escape route into a cave system. Gonkin praises the brilliant use of the terrain. Yachiho praises Isaza for his performance, asking how he came up with such a plan. Still catching his breath, Isaza explains that he just combined things he'd seen before, like the stone bridge and the idea of a hidden escape route. Isaza sobers, noting that this is only a temporary measure and doesn't solve the main issue Gonkan raised earlier. Yachiho agrees, but then cheekily adds that they can't plan for every eventuality, or he might end up locked underground for 300 years. She tells him that in critical moments, you just have to follow your instincts. Isaza smiles, understanding her point and agreeing with her. Yachiho leans in playfully, asking with a grin, "What do you think? I'm a reliable wife, right?" Isaza beams back at her and declares, "Yes." It's reassuring. Pleased with his answer, Yachiho smirks and suggests that it's time he rewarded her for her efforts. A flustered Isaza looks at her, completely caught off guard by the suggestion. In a moment of pure sincerity, Isaza gently pats Yachiho on the head. He tells her she's worked so hard and thanks her from the bottom of his heart, leaving Yachiho utterly stunned by the innocent gesture. Yachiho makes a comical face of disbelief. Confused, Isaza asks what's wrong, explaining that his older brother often used to pat his head just like that as a sign of praise. Yachiho can only sigh in exasperation. She thought he was a brave and admirable man, but his innocent gesture reminds her that he's still just a boy. With a sigh of, "Oh well," she begins to lead the way out of the cave. With a slight, knowing smirk, Yachiho thinks to herself that for today, she'll take what she can get, accepting the head pat as his earnest reward. Meanwhile, Gonkan addresses the rescued villagers, instructing them to prepare to depart. He informs them that those with relatives can seek shelter with them, while the Inami will provide protection for those who have nowhere else to go. The villagers are grateful, but also overwhelmed. Doubt and fear spread amongst the villagers. Some worry about injured family members or how they will survive with no home. Others question if they can truly trust Mio, the supposed princess. Despite the uncertainty, one man decides to take the chance for the sake of his child. Mio is dismayed to learn that some villagers would rather stay and die in their hometown than escape. Gonkin calmly explains that the decision is theirs and they won't force anyone, noting that both she and Lord Isaza are kind. As Isaza and Yachiho emerge from the cave and continue their journey along the cliff, Gonkin watches them, reflecting on their compassionate actions. He worries that this very kindness, which drove them to save the villagers, may ultimately be the cause of their downfall. Just as Gonkan finishes his thought, he is ambushed. Two female warriors, the pursuers from before, appear behind him, pressing a blade to his neck and ordering him not to move. Their escape has been cut short.